Hey everyone, Paul here, and welcome to another video by Tried and True. We decided to do something a little different this time around. With the Nova Open coming up and Tabletop Armory helping us out, we thought it would actually be a great idea to showcase how we're using some of their products to prepare the Warmachine tables for the convention. Using the templates provided by Tabletop Armory, it's very easy to come up with your own set of terrain that can end up becoming a theme set. Whether it's for a convention or your local game shop or even for your own home, it's really not that hard to be able to make this stuff. It's great to be able to make a cohesive table that looks thematic and fun to play on. This helps you build your immersion while playing your Warmachine games or any other tabletop games. It's very, very daunting to get started with making a terrain, especially if you have no background in doing it. But I promise you, all these terrain pieces are super easy to make, and I think that anybody could end up doing it. It requires a little bit of resources to get started. You might have to go to your local hardware store, but I guarantee that once these pieces start to come together, you're going to make some pretty awesome tables that you just cannot wait to play on. So before starting any project, it's important to figure out what kind of theme you want to go for. For example, do you want to create an autumn theme farm? Or possibly a spooky swamp? Or possibly even a snowy wasteland? There's so much potential in what kind of tables you can go ahead and make that it's only limited by your own creativity. Creating a themed table can be extremely fun and rewarding. You can start off by making a few pieces that you can work with for any map, and then start to add more terrain pieces, or even themed set pieces, whether that's using the same kind of flocking or painting techniques. This helps building a variety of different scenarios or tables for your games to make them that much more engaging for you and your fellow gamers. Now, what's really cool about the Iron King is that there's many unique and interesting locations to draw inspiration from, and lots of great artwork out there. But one place that I think would be really cool to go do is the iconic Henge Hold, the place where the Infernal Invasion just had its last epic battle and conclusion. But to get started, we need to do some background research about Henge Hold, and I don't really even know where to start off with that. It'd be great we had some kind of residential Iron Kingdoms expert or tour guide around that maybe help us out getting started.
Oh, hey, Paul, what's going on in here?
Hey, Matt Goetz, hey, how you doing? It's
doing
great
right.
to see you.
Yeah.
Hey, Matt, you got a minute?
Oh, sure. What's up?
Look, okay, so I'm working on this project on trying to do Henge Hold, and like I look at the Iron Kingdoms RPG books and stuff, and can you help me out, just try and getting started with it?
Oh, sure. So the Henge Hold is really, really, really old. It was the last mainland Orgoth fortification to fall, but it has history before that. It's more than just a Stonehenge. It's a big, complex area. There are ruins from old fortifications around there, and it's been built up over and over again across the centuries. There are still standing stones there, but you would have partially buried ruins at the edges with the hanging stones, as they're called, in a really central, prominent place.
So the strongholds would be on the outside of the henges, or would they kind of be mixed within them of these hanging stones?
So I think it would be a mix of both, right? You'd have the fortification base underneath the hanging stones, but the entire coastal area around it, you'd have bits and pieces of old foundations and buried walls and stuff like that.
Okay, that's pretty cool. How big are these henges? Is it Stonehenge size, or are they ginormous?
So everything in the Iron Kingdoms is on an IK scale, Everything's a bit beefier, it's a bit chunkier. A hand cannon is more than just a pistol, right? So these would have to be pretty heavily built.
Okay, gotcha. And then I guess, what would the surrounding terrain? You mentioned a coastline. If I'm looking outside of Henge Hold, where is it? Is it a grassy land, or is it barren?
No, it's definitely more verdant. It's in the Western Marsh province, not too far from the city of Ramark. Oh, you're going to see a lot of green and gray, clouds coming in off the coastline. It's very, very close to the edge. I kind of picture it as like the North Irish coast almost.
Okay, I can get behind that. Let's say that you're at a convention, right? And you see Henge Hold tables. What are you looking for? What is it yep, that's Henge Hold right there?
I think definitely it would have to be the portal that was constructed there, or the memorials that have been put in place afterward, because it's more than just Stonehenge, right? This is where the Celestial Gate was built by the convergence of Cirrus that allowed people to go off to a different galaxy and kickstart the whole Warcaster setting. You'll probably have some element of that behind, be it debris from the original one, or a monument that's been constructed in the aftermath, or something like that.
And in the lore, it talks about this monument not being as big as the original gate, but how big is it? I mean, we still got to be able to play a Warmachine game on this table.
Yeah, absolutely. Is Statue of Liberty too big? Like,
I think that is like 4 tables together, Matt.
So maybe something more reasonable than a Statue of Liberty. That is like basically an island. So it would definitely be a scale that people would see it from a ways off, right? You'd have ships passing by and they'd be able to pick out where this memorial is in the distance.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I mean, I'll see what I can do. Maybe it'll be like going off the side of a table, but that sounds really cool. All right, Matt, I think I got enough detail to know where to go to, so thank you so much for stopping by.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a lot of fun.
All right, well, I'm super motivated now. Okay, so with all this in mind, there's more than just the hanging stones. There's ruins of strongholds, there's the aftermath of the infernal invasion, and I'm going for an overall green coastal biome. Okay, so for this project, I'm going to go and try to match these descriptions as best I can to have that overall cohesive table design, as well as make it so that these pieces will be modular, so that way I can change what kind of areas the players will fight in. So for this guide, we're going to go ahead and focus on some basic pieces. We're going to work on basic terrain bases, walls, and finally the forests. Terrain in Warmachine varies from forests, rubble, obstructions, and so much more. So for this, we're going to go and try to make some generic bases that can be used anywhere. For this guide, we're going to be using Tabletop Armory's terrain bases, as well as the forest templates. We're going to go start off by picking what templates that we want to go ahead and work with. And just to let you know, the terrain bases that they come with vary in lots of different sizes and shapes. Very much so, sizes and shapes you wouldn't associate with normal terrain. It's totally up to you on how you want to use these, and honestly, these different shapes and sizes challenges your creativity to make some pretty unique pieces that will feel natural on your table. To get started, we're going to go use some foam board. This stuff is money for crafting. This stuff takes indentations and textures extremely well and can be picked up by any local dollar store. You want to make sure that you remove one side of this paper because that's going to be grabbing all these textures that you're going to apply. Now, let's go ahead and pick some pieces and trace our design. Now, taking a look, these are just some of the bases that I picked up, and all I'm going to go do is trace this piece around, and then I'm going to go and draw an internal shape to know where I'm going to go and cut it. This is going to go and fit on top of the base. Okay, now we're going to go and cut these into more manageable pieces, so that way it's going to be a lot easier. I'm currently cutting the pieces to shape, and just to let you know, this step is totally optional. You don't have to apply foam board to these terrain bases. You can just texture them and call it a day. But what I'm going for is this stronghold style, so I thought that this would be super neat to have on the table. Now, normally when you end up using this foam board, you do want to try to bevel the edges so that way your models kind of fit more flush on it. However, because I'm seeing these strongholds being more blocky and chunky, I'm going to go ahead and have these hard edges. Okay, so this thing right here is a texture foam roller. I got this from Thingiverse for free, and there's a lot of variety of options that are out there for you to go use. If you have a 3D printer, I definitely recommend that you go ahead and print up some of these guys. This one is going to do just fine. It has a stony blockwork texture to it. With the paper peeled off, we're going to go ahead and use this foam texture roller and apply it to the foam. And it's going to pick out all those awesome details. If you don't have a 3D printer or have access to one of these rollers, a pen or soft pencil will end up working, though it will take a lot more time. Here's a bit of a close-up of the texture. It's not really easy to see with the picture being fuzzy, but I promise it will pop once we add color to it. Now what we're going to go do is we're going to glue these pieces on. You could either glue it on first and then apply the texture, or apply the texture then glue it on. It doesn't really matter as long as it ends up adhering to the textured piece. Again, as I mentioned before, this is completely optional. You do not need to do this. I just like adding a little bit more detail to my pieces. In the event that some of the pieces are raised on the side, just add something heavy in order to go ahead and weigh it down, but not too heavy that it messes up with the detail that was applied on the foam. This is a mixture of PVA white glue and water. PVA glue works by drying and it becomes a lot more stickier. This is the adhering properties that it has. So when you apply a little bit of water to it, it thins down the glue but doesn't change its properties of how it sticks. You want to try to keep to a 1-to-1 ratio, or a 1 glue to maybe quarter or half water, depending on how thick you want it to be. There was a little bit of black paint at the bottom of this I forgot to clean out, but that's not a problem. It'll actually help you out in being able to see where we are applying the glue, so that way we know where to add our sand later. If the pieces look a little bit different, these are ones that I worked on earlier. I made a lot of terrain. For the next part, we plan to texture the terrain by using sand. You can pick up sand anywhere from like a hardware store, or maybe if you want to even go walk down to a local beach or something. But if you end up getting this sand, you're going to go ahead and use it, and it's going to act as the dirt for your terrain. What's really great is that if you use a simple dry brush technique, it will end up picking up all the little tiny raised bits of sand, and it's going to give you a really nice looking dirt texture. In order to go ahead and do it, all we're going to go do is just put a lot of sand onto these pieces, and then we're just going to go shake off the excess. You want to make sure that you have this thing dry, so that way you can prime it black without moving any of the sand. Okay, so here we are priming these pieces black. You can go and use any primer that you'd like to, but typically I like to go with black. It's typically traditional and everything comes out all right. In the case that you miss a spot, you can just call it a shadow or something. You have to be careful though, because as you can see, I am painting this by hand. You want to avoid spray paint if you're using any kind of foam. That's anything like an insulation foam or this foam board. There's a chance that the spray may have some kind of additive to it that'll cause the foam to melt and give off some nasty fumes that may make you feel sick. You want to avoid this. If you have an airbrush though, that's fair game. I just didn't bring mine for this, so we're going to be painting the old-fashioned way. Remember how we had all those different materials like sand and foam and even the base itself? Well, once you end up adding a base coat, you can't really tell the difference from where one piece starts and the other one ends. It looks like it's just one solid piece of terrain, and that's one of the magical pieces of this. You can do this with any piece. So this piece right here was something I was playing around with. It's very important that you play with your color palette that you want to work with for your pieces of terrain. So maybe like have some small bases or some throwaway pieces off to the side that you do a little bit of practice on. With this, I'm very happy with the result. I was trying to go for an ochre brown color that I wanted to go use for these stronghold stones. For these paints and for any terrain piece that I work with, I typically go and use this Craftsmart paint brand. Look, you can end up using your expensive acrylics, but I find that you use a lot of paint and those bottles are very expensive. 99 cents gets you one of these little squeeze bottles right here, and honestly, it's more than what you'll ever need. I'm going to go and start using this brown, and we're going to start painting the dirt. You want to try to do as much dry brushing as possible, because that's going to go and pick up all the little tiny sand pieces that are on your piece of terrain. If you end up painting too heavy, like you can see right there, it might end up just covering the whole thing in brown, which if that's what you're going for, by all means go for it. But I like dry brushing everything on because it really makes it look like there's a lot of depth to your piece. I'm now using this color called golden brown, which is a slightly lighter brown than the one that we used before, and we're going to dry brush with it again. We want to try to make sure that both colors are able to go ahead and be seen. I don't know about you, but I think this is looking pretty good. Okay, so with that testing piece done, I'm now going to go ahead and work on my stones. For this, I'm going to go ahead and take some yellow and that golden brown I used earlier. I'm going to be mixing them up to a 1-to-1 ratio and getting this really neat ochre brownish color. I'm going to go ahead and dry brush the stonework as well. Now I want to add some more variety to my stone. Not all rock looks the same, so maybe when they were building the stronghold, they ended up just finding whatever rock that was useful. Here, I'm going to go ahead and use some milk chocolate color, and I'm going to go ahead and combine it with the different colors I've already used already. and I think it's going to add a lot of intrigue to my table. This is completely optional. You don't have to do this, but I say go for it. I'm going to go ahead and now use some gray, and I'm going to go ahead and give my stone a weathered, cohesive look. I want to be careful about the amount of gray that I use because I don't want to cover up all the different brown colors that I have. Here I'm going to be adding my water and PVA glue mixture to the dirt path so that way I can add my green flocking material to it. I don't want to cover all the dirt patches because I want to make sure I can see that detail at the end. Okay, for this we're going to go ahead and use this green flock that I picked up at my local hobby store. This stuff is great. One of these will fuel many terrain basing projects that I'll have for the future. Okay, here's all the flock. We're going to go ahead and shake off the excess and see what it looks like. Alright, that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and move on to the next piece. The next thing we're going to go work on will be our walls, also known as obstacles. So for this, you can pick up a couple of different templates in order to go and make these. There are some that are actually wall template size, the 4 inches by 3/4 inch. There are longer pieces that are 6 inches long. You can cut them short or keep them for variety. Despite these shapes being irregular, I think I'm going to go ahead and still use them to go and make these walls. Again, these templates may seem a little difficult to work with, but with some creativity, you can make some pretty awesome scatter pieces. Okay, so what we're going to go use to make these walls will be some insulation foam. You can pick this up from any Home Depot or Lowe's. I got this one specifically from Lowe's. It's a 2 foot by 2 foot square, which fits in my smaller hobby ink location. I cut out individual bricks. The measurements for these bricks is 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch by 1 inch, and I made about 3 or 4 dozen of these. Placing the bricks, it's important to kind of get a general sense of what you think your wall is going to go and look like. You don't want to immediately just start gluing them because you may be unhappy with how it all sticks together. Once you get a general idea of what you want your walls to look like, then you can use that white PVA glue, not watered down, just regular, and you can start to stick them together. This will take a real long time to dry, so we're just going to go leave this for a few hours. Okay, this is what it looks like afterwards, and it's a pretty solid piece right now. We're going to go ahead and texture and base them the exact same way that we did the terrain bases earlier. We're just going to go ahead and add some glue, some sand, and then some black paint, and we'll be done with that. I would recommend though that when you're painting these, you may want to have different sized brushes to be able to get in those little nooks and crannies so that way you don't have any blue insulation foam sticking out. Okay, here we go. We're going to go ahead and paint our dirt with that brown paint again, just like we did for the terrain bases. Just a little bit of dry brushing here and then some golden brown to go on top of it. Now I'm going to be painting the bricks, and I'm going to go use the exact same ochre style that I did before. I'm going to go ahead and mix my 1:1 ratio of yellow and golden brown. Now I'm going to go ahead and mix that with some lighter colors, and I'll just go ahead and dry brush them on. Once it dries, I'm going to go ahead and dry brush my gray on top of it, just to brighten it up a little bit. We'll go ahead and add our glue and flock once again. And that's our finished wall. Okay, with that out of the way, we'll go ahead and work on our forest templates. Now, what's really cool about Tabletop Armory is that there are some pre-designed forest shapes. They have smalls, mediums, and larges. For this project, I'm using most of my larges, and I picked out a couple of smalls and mediums as well. When you end up looking at these forest templates, you'll see that there are these smaller circles. This is where you're going to go and glue your trees on, so that way you can put them in and remove them during play, so it doesn't end up making for awkward measurements. I plan on using these forest bases for more than just trees. I want to use these for rubble and tall grass too. During your checkout, ask to get some more of those circular pieces, and I guarantee you'll get way more mileage out of these terrain bits. Okay, so something different that we have to go do is that we have to go ahead and glue these inserts on top of the bases. So we'll just use PVA glue and super glue and we'll bond these together. You can use wood glue as well, but I just found that this stuff works perfectly fine. And here's all the different bases. We're gonna have to give them a chance to dry. Okay, so here are the trees that we're gonna go ahead and use. These are from Woodland Scenics. I decided to go ahead and just get pre-made trees just for the simplicity of this project. You can end up getting your own individual armatures and then starting to flock them yourselves, but I find that the timing for that is a lot, and honestly, I'm okay with just using these for this project. I also like to go ahead and make sure that my trees are going to go ahead and fit onto the base, so that way they don't bump into each other, making for a really awkward forest. The best trees that I've seen from Woodland Scenics are definitely the fir and spruce trees because they go straight up. Okay, now seeing that they are fitting, I'm going to go ahead and use some white glue and super glue to make a very sticky bond, and I'm going to go ahead and apply all these trees to their bases. This bond will be super strong because you want to make sure that you don't remove the tree from the base when you remove it from that little circular area within the forest template. Here are all the completed trees. Now we're going to go ahead and let them dry and we'll continue to work on our forest bases. Just like we did before, we're going to go ahead and apply some glue and some sand and we are going to texture this. Now, a word of advice for this. You want to make sure that you don't get sand and glue within the inside circles because that's going to make it so that those little circular inserts won't actually fit. So what we can use is some kind of tool. This is a dental pick sculpting tool I picked up a while ago, and I'm going to go use this to remove any excess. If you do find that there is not a good fit, do not worry. A little bit of rough sandpaper at the end will help clean this up. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and apply my texture. Okay, we're going to go ahead and give these trees the exact same treatment by using some glue and sand. Okay, off screen, I ended up painting these terrain bases black, and I'm going to go ahead and do what I did before, where I'm going to go ahead and paint it black. I'll use my brown, then my golden brown. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and put the glue on. Apply some flock. And there is the finished product. Here's all the pieces that I was working on all finished up. I painted up the trees and flocked them the exact same way that I did with the other bases, and I'm pretty happy with how this looks. If you stuck around with this the whole entire time, thanks for tuning in. And let us know in the comments if you'd be interested in seeing more of these hobby videos and making more Warmachine terrain. I'm going to continue to be working on these pieces for this Henge Hold table, so let me know if you want to see more. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next video, everybody. Bye!